Hello, protocols, packets, and programs. In a world where breaches are commonplace and best practices no longer make sense, one woman holds the future of application security in her hands. Why am I doing an impression of the movie trailer guy? Because this week we're interviewing a star. Melinda Marks is with us to discuss her latest research on modernizing AppSec. In theaters soon, it's Application Security Weekly.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
It's the show to learn the latest tools and techniques to understand DevOps, applications, and the cloud. Your trusted source for the latest AppSec news. It's time for Application Security Weekly.
This is episode 307, recorded on Monday, November 11th, 2024. I'm your host, Adrian Sanabria, and joining me is John Kinsella. How are you doing, John?
Hey, Adrian. Happy Monday. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good. Nervous about doing voices on the intro there. I don't typically do that, but I'm trying to, trying to bring the fun, that I'm standing in for here. Trying to bring that vibe. With the intros. All right, today we're talking to Melinda Marks, and the topic is modernizing AppSec. We're excited to have her here. She's the cybersecurity practice director from Enterprise Security Strategy Group. I always want to say security for that S.
Mm-hmm. I get it. Yeah.
Prior to becoming an analyst, Melinda spent 20 years in marketing and strategy roles at companies like Soluble, Armor Blocks, Styra,
yep,
Styra, Tenable, and Qualys. Welcome to the show, Melinda.
Thanks so much for having me, and also say Happy Veterans Day for all those who served.
Yeah, absolutely. My girlfriend falls into that category, and a lot of my family on the Puerto Rican side of my family. So, lot of veterans down there. Mm-hmm. Yes, they are part of America. Some people are not aware of this.
Yep.
So, it's always really interesting going through this kind of research. I love reading through these kinds of reports. I love data in general and analysis of data. I used to be an analyst myself, and maybe let's start off. Tell us about the study, what some of the goals were for the study, because it's, as I presented it, at least, I think it's a little bit more specific than I presented it. It is specific to native cloud security. It's not modernizing all of AppSec necessarily. But yeah, tell us a little bit about the goals and, the study itself.
Yeah, definitely. And so, like you said, my background, I've been in cybersecurity for some decades now, and mostly on the vendor side. And now as an analyst, what's fun is to do these research projects to try to find data and information that will be helpful and kind of move the needle, maybe be a little bit edgy. And so I cover cloud and application security, and I also run the cybersecurity segment at Enterprise Strategy Group. But my coverage area is cloud and application security. And what I try to do is look into new trends, what are pressing challenges for security teams, and try to get the data that is going to help the teams, the security leaders make improvements to their programs. So the thought behind this study and, other studies I've done are on developer-focused security, which I think changes rapidly. And it's kind of the premise is there's more and more workloads that are cloud native. And that is because if you can modernize your AppSec using cloud services and all of the technology stack that gives you, you get faster development cycles, you get more productivity. And this study was all about, well, what can AppSec teams do to make sure that they can modernize to support that scale, to support more workloads that are moving to the cloud, to support agile development processes, CICD processes. And some of that is, I think, difficult for traditional security teams because we have ideas of we want to do all the security things. We want to play with security tools. We want to be the ones using the security tools. Now, all of a sudden, there's a scale issue. where development is so fast and IT and ops have shifted. We talk about shift left. IT and ops have shifted left. So developers are more empowered to do things. They can provision their own infrastructure. They can quickly build their applications. But then I talk about and study a lot of how does that shift left occur for security, where a lot of that happens in development processes to ease that bottleneck of everything going through security. And then what do security teams need to be able to scale? What kinds of tools should they be using? How should they change their approaches? How can they adapt so that they're really positioned for success? And of course, we always talk about security teams being an enabler rather than a blocker. And those are the types of things that, I wanted to examine here. And what can we do to modernize to keep up with the other modernization that we see with application development and the tech stack?
Something that, I think most people have recognized at this point is that the delineation between cloud, new world, DevOps, old world, like it's really blurry. It's really fuzzy, right? There's a lot of hybrid stuff going on. There's, the old stuff didn't go away just because cloud exists, right? So how does this, just kind of understanding where the report touches on and doesn't, are the results more broadly applicable, even if you're not cloud native? Or, how hard a line is that in some of the research and the survey results you got? Or did you get a sense for that at all?
Yeah, and that brings up some really good points. And we have our cybersecurity segment at Enterprise Strategy Group. Of course, we have the other segment that focuses on infrastructure trends, modernization trends for development. And what we do see is that smaller organizations can be more nimble. They don't have the legacy burden of a lot of on-premises stuff. So a lot of times they'll go to cloud services to set things up. And so what happens is some of those smaller companies with fewer people can innovate faster than some of the larger companies that have a lot of the legacy systems, a lot of on-prem, and then those enterprises are adapting and they're moving more and more to the cloud. And so what we see is when we're studying like cloud adoption, we do see a lot of those hybrid environments. And so a lot of the organizations are trying to adapt from, if you're cloud native, born in the cloud, you've got sometimes the security teams are a lot different. They may not have an actual security team. They may have a DevOps volunteer to take care of some security stuff. They may have a site reliability engineer. And so there's some evolution that's happening there.
Or an intern.
Yeah, right. Like you just don't know. These are evolving a lot and quickly. And then for enterprises, you have a traditional AppSec team, you have a traditional SOC, you have all the traditional teams that you would have. And then they have to make sure they can maintain their on-premises environments, but then they also have to figure out how to adapt. And then what we see too, that I don't want to see, is if there are IT and ops teams where there are cybersecurity incidents that are affecting operations, right? If you have an attack or a breach and your app goes down, that's an IT and an operations issue. And sometimes you see the VP of Ops or IT coming in and getting more involved and kind of circumventing the security teams. And that's what you don't want. You want the security teams to retain and keep their control, be trusted as the ones who understand what's happening, and they know what to do, and it's in a way that's going to help rather than a way that's going to cause friction or slow things down. And that was, a lot of these studies I've tried to see how that's going. For a period, I think I talked about this on the last show that I was on with you guys, is we saw a period of rapid cloud native adoption, and then all of a sudden there was a lot of friction because security teams were trying to impose security tools onto developers. Developers don't necessarily want to use a security tool. They don't want to use something that's outside of their workflow or their development processes. And then there was friction. And then you also saw a lot of attempts to target developers for security tools, and that has mixed results. Like, there are some developers who will get really excited about securing their own code and go research what open source tools should I use, what can I do. But then when it comes to security teams and enterprises, what you have is you have different development teams scaling rapidly. You have different teams doing different things. They have different skills and experience with security. And then the security team has to figure out, well, how do I do that consistently? How do I get control? And then for visibility, do all the things that I need to do, which I need visibility, I need control, I need to set policies, I need to make sure that if something bad happens, I can respond quickly, that rather than, oh, I have a CSPM tool that's catching some issue, and now I can't figure out which development team to go to fix this, and then you have all these problems. And that's the scale issue that we see. And again, we want to help security teams make sure that they're equipped and trusted to take control and be able to set things up so they can support the scale and growth.
It's funny, you said something there which is at its heart, it sounds like a good thing, but my core reaction was, oh my God, no. And that's the developers going and looking for their own security tools. Mm-hmm. And that it seems like, I mean, it's you want that developer to like that has, I mean, I think that's at that point, we were talking for a while about like security champions and that type of thing. But mm-hmm. like that should still be driven by security, not by some random developer going, oh, maybe I should secure this. I know there's different maturity in different companies, but it's just sort of, I think to me it's interesting, just my reaction of like, sounds like a good thing, but no, that's bad.
Yeah, and I go to and I think more security people should go to these types of conferences where there's security tracks. But, you know, I usually go to the KubeCon type shows where there's a lot of developers especially for software supply chain security or things like API security. They're trying to, it is good for developers to understand what are the security implications for the way that you're developing your apps. You don't want to just keep building and not take steps to secure your applications or your code. You want to make sure that you're checking with the security team. But I have these conversations with the people who are in those security talks. You know, what's your role at your organization? At the KubeCon shows, it's not security folks who are there. It's the developers and the cloud native folks. And mm-hmm. Well, do you work with the security team? It's either like, yeah, I know who they are, or it's like, no, I try to not work with the security team because they're just going to slow me down. Yeah, like I don't want to. And I kind of informally track that whenever I go to those conferences because it's very interesting to me. And also covering AppSec, when we set up these research studies, I'm one of the few cybersecurity analysts where when I do the research, sometimes in the respondent profiles, and you know, there's always questions at the beginning to boot the people who shouldn't be taking the survey. I'm keeping some of those folks on there if they say they are making decisions for cybersecurity, even if they're a developer or DevOps or they're in these other roles. Whereas most of the other cybersecurity research, it's focused on security respondents and what they're seeing and doing.
Cool. Excuse me. I want to go down to one of the figures in here. I lost track of which question it was. And let's see if I can frame this up and speak. You had a few questions in there around IAC, which companies are using them, how much are they using, are they increasing, that sort of standard question. And the one that was interesting to me is, are you seeing misconfigurations or a growing number of misconfigurations due to IAC, and how is that affecting your organization? What's the response to that? Any chance you have that historically?
Yeah.
In other words, where I'm going is that getting better over time, or is it improving, or that's?
Yeah. So we asked this question the very first study I did when I became an analyst, because I was coming from a startup that was addressing scanning for infrastructure as code. And we have the data, and it's very similar. There's increasing usage of infrastructure as code. There are a lot of misconfigurations. The good news is that a lot of organizations are doing the scanning so that they're aware of infrastructure as code. When I was at that vendor company, if we talked to CISOs or security leaders about infrastructure as code, it was like what? What are you talking about? And then we would say, oh, Terraform or CloudFormation, and then they would sometimes get it, but they didn't realize. And I would say in general, this is what we see a lot is when you see the list of types of cybersecurity incidents people are facing, that's when people all of a sudden get budget or interest in solving problems. And, those misconfigurations and things that the infrastructure as code could minimize risk for, all of a sudden, it seems like there has been more of a focus on infrastructure as code scanning and just catching things before they're deployed. That movement I've seen is very good.
That one's it's been interesting to me from the point of view of, I think a lot of people go down that path and they drink any of those particular flavors of Kool-Aid and go like, oh, this is going to be great. It's going to solve all our problems. I see it's going to rule the world. And then usually about 6 or 8 months in, you're like, oh, what have I gotten myself into? It's this sort of spaghetti mess of things that, don't always do what you want them to do. So it's interesting to see that the pattern there and how to think about that from a security point of view.
Yes, definitely. And I think that's also just evolving into, in general, more work with platform engineering. And that's where we talk about security teams needing to partner with different groups to align on goals like developers, AppSec, IT, platform engineers. You can all align on basic things like we want our applications to be highly available. We want them to be resilient. We want to make sure that we can best serve our customers or anybody who's using the applications. We want to make sure the access is right. Like it's tied to security, but it's tied to all of these groups and what their goals are. And if you can get that alignment and collaborate versus not working together or not understanding the needs, then that a lot of times sets you up for success. And that's, one of the things this study found was that it's hard to measure application security effectiveness or program effectiveness. If you can align with those different teams and get them on board, that helps you get your budget and show that what you're doing is worthwhile. And, those are the types of things that security teams should be doing.
Yeah, it seems, one of the things I love about a lot of modern AppSec is that in the pursuit of the things that are important to them, resiliency and availability and things like that, security get benefits as kind of an unintended side effect there, right? Like infrastructure as code, there are cloud native organizations who are confident that they could rebuild the business overnight, if they needed to, if the entire AWS infrastructure got ransomware, and some have had to do that. We've seen companies have to do that. And I think that's unthinkable for a traditional, let's drive to SunGuard and fire up the mainframe, environments where, I remember being in charge of disaster recovery where I did the analysis and it worst case scenario, the day before the next full backup, if that's when we had our incident, I think it was just 16 days of popping tapes in and restoring from tape just for us to get our main CRM back online. So it's just I find that
infrastructure as code is a good example too of developers kind of being aware of it, and then what was happening that we were seeing at my startup company, and then also through the research is, and also this is backed up by this modern AppSec study when we asked what types of tools are you using, and there's a wide variety, and sometimes it's one of those you've got some development teams going off and finding cool open source tools, and then they're not consistently used across the development team, and then security teams don't really know about that. And that's one of the interesting findings of this study too, is that need for consistency and that need for scalability. Because if you have those different development teams and they're all using different scanning tools, and there are really cool open source scanning tools, or a lot of times it's with people who don't know security, but they're using the cloud services. Maybe they're just checking off a box to do vulnerability scanning of their code, or all of these CSPs offer these items. They offer SBOM creation, and for AppSec teams, it's let's make sure that I understand what the development teams are each doing. Like, when they're building their applications, are they setting up their entitlements correctly? Are they going to be able to manage the permissions correctly once they deploy? Maybe when they're developing, they're opening a lot of access to enable their collaboration to build their best applications. But are they doing the right things they need to do before they deploy the application, so that there's not these extra attack surfaces and there's risk, and then I know you guys interviewed my colleague Todd Tiemann, and there's data security issues. Like those are things that security teams need to collaborate with the other teams, figure out a consistent way, figure out goals to make, just to help everybody. And, those aren't easy things to solve because they're siloed across different teams and different groups. But, those are the scaling issues that you see with modern AppSec, where you can just let developers build and be productive and contribute to your company growth. And then it happens too quickly, and then it's out of control. And then your AppSec teams just have a hard time, or your SOC has a hard time responding. So, those are the things we want people to know is how can you collaborate? What types of solutions should you look for? I think there's a lot of opportunity for security vendors to be the ones who say, those open source tools, or maybe those features enabled across different CSPs. We know that a lot of organizations use multiple CSPs, so it's not easy to just, set up, if you're using AWS, here are all the security controls you need. Well, we also use Google and Microsoft. Mm-hmm. All of that is challenging. And those are opportunities where security vendors can get in there and say, let me help you make sure that you have that consistency and you can scale, or, I can show you where you're lacking instead of you trying to figure this stuff out.
The one thing I always really disliked about, at least any of the IAC tools I used, it comes down to that exact example, right? Like, I'm deploying to AWS, I've got my code there. Hey, maybe there's some reason I want to not be reliant on a single vendor, and I want to use GCP or Azure or Oracle or whatever else. It'd be so amazing if I could say, take this thing I've got, install it on that guy instead. But I've never seen any that are that easy and simple. It's usually takes us a complete separate code base, at least on the IAC side. And it's I don't know. That alone is at least to me, a stellar example of, just waiting for something to happen, of misconfigurations.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we see that in so many other places too. I so often hear us is an amazing tool, but it doesn't support .NET, and we really need that, so you end up with two tools, or, okay, we're shopping for an MDM, and we're 50% Macs and 50% Windows. Do we get the one that's great on Windows or the one that's great on Mac? Because there's not one that solves both of those for you. So I don't know. Maybe that's just maturity of the tool space, or enough buyers aren't pushing for that. I don't know what the issue is there.
Yeah, and I think that also there's another interesting finding from the report that we talk about, which there's a lot of data in this report. I urge anybody to go through it because there's a lot of interesting stuff. But to me, one of the key takeaways too was we asked, do you prefer best of breed versus consolidated tools? And this, of course, is a big thing for security teams, because I know, there was this period where there's just a lot of alert fatigue and efforts to consolidate tools. But there are those challenges where, like you just described, it's hard to consolidate, or you can't consolidate. You still need the best tools for different things. And so, this research showed that they do prefer best of breed. And then there are some efforts to consolidate, because again, you need that efficiency. But to me, again, these are opportunities for vendors to talk to AppSec teams and dig in and find those pain points and figure out what's a way that I can help you scale. things like the entitlements. Each CSP has different ways of managing entitlements. There were some very good vendor tools that helped you get visibility across whatever cloud platform you're using. Like those are good examples of ways where vendors can get in there. And this to me comes from maybe, and this is the startup world, is there's a lot of people who worked at big enterprises and they had to do this. They had to solve these problems at their companies. And then they realized this opportunity because not everybody has super genius people who could build custom tools or custom integrations. Is, well, can I go become a vendor and offer this because this is something that will provide a lot of value and time and cost savings for companies if they're trying to solve these problems.
It's part of one of the core issues of this industry, right? It's the technology is moving so quickly that we're trying to secure that while it'd be great to have a platform that does all these things for you, that takes years to build and develop or acquire different startups and start bringing them together. But in the meantime, we've got all these little point products, which hopefully do what you're looking for and that they're mature enough that they're not going to make things worse for you.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so as someone who was writing the SDLC security standards for a large fintech in 2005, I always find it kind of funny seeing stuff saying, hey, we need to include security in the CICD pipeline or in the SDLC process. Did you get a sense from this report and like maturity wise, like how far along that journey we are? Because I imagine everyone has something security related in that pipeline, but where are we at there?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's funny too, because when I got the results back, there's stats for how many of you are incorporating DevOps. And then the follow-up question is how many have DevSecOps, where you're trying to incorporate security. And it's usually surprising to me that the percentages aren't as high as you would think they would be for DevOps. And then, of course, the DevSecOps trails. The commentary is it's good to see these efforts. And it's good to me, like the goal is always about efficiency, productivity, efficiency, and then also collaboration. So to me, it's always just a matter of, well, does security have those things as well? Versus, like we were just discussing, creating like more problems that need to be separately solved. Is, how do you help security? And again, a lot of it is how do you make sure that those security teams aren't circumvented? Because in this quest for efficiency, and I see this too, like when I got the results back from this modern AppSec study, I was thinking about how many security vendor tools serve this versus are there some DevOps tools and processes where some of the data that it generates has security use cases? So I'm talking about like the application monitoring products or some of the observability products. They have really great security use cases. So in that quest for efficiency, and trying to solve for siloed issues, you don't want security teams to just be, I don't need you anymore. We can just incorporate. That's like the danger, right, of over incorporating security into development and DevOps processes is, we don't need the security team anymore. Well, no, you absolutely do need them. But it's just like what I've always said from when I started as an analyst is we need security, but they just need different things now. And that's part of that evolution from traditional AppSec to modernized is you're not doing all the things. You're not trying to necessarily get coverage of all the things and have tools for everything. Like I don't need a gazillion alerts because I'm afraid of missing something that might pose risk. It's more about making sure that you have the visibility and the control. And then the, I guess, exciting part is we've wanted to automate things. We've wanted to bring in platforms to collect data and give you the context and save you that time of having to manually go through the alerts if you have some automation. And now we have Gen AI coming. What are ways where that cuts down some of that nasty, tedious work that AppSec teams have been doing and hate doing, and then now they actually get those efficiency gains. But a lot of this, again, depends on the other teams, collaborating with the other teams, gaining their trust, and then knowing that the security teams are going to really add that value that they need for the goals that they're trying to reach.
Yeah, well, I think that answers my last question. My last question was going to be kind of like, what are the ingredients that go into this recipe of modernizing AppSec? Because we talked about, the importance for the security team to align with AppSec, otherwise they avoid them, right?
Mm-hmm.
But also the need for tooling to stay up to date, to automate a lot of this stuff. I wanted to go a little bit deeper into generative AI, but we're kind of at a time, like it seems like this area, developers are adopting generative AI maybe quicker than anybody else that I've seen. I guess just wrapping up on what that balance, what that recipe looks like for modernizing AppSec in general. Like what are the main ingredients that go into that and the balance there?
Yeah, definitely. And that hits on another, what I think is a key finding from the study is when we asked about top challenges and concerns, it was all, the top one was Gen AI. And again, I'll be on this again to talk to you more. We can dive into the Gen AI stuff, but there's a lot of exciting stuff that can happen in that area. But it's number one, talk to developers, make sure that they're educated and there's a training program so they understand the risks. By talking to these other teams, you will build that trust and respect of, the security team is going to help me because now I don't have to go look for tools that I should be using. They're going to help me find the ones that are going to scale. Look for those kinds of opportunities of making sure that the developers understand that the security team is there to help them. It's if you can make security changes as early as you can in the development process, and I've ranted about the shift left being across the entire development lifecycle, but this is good for developers if ideally they can make changes before their apps are released and running. But also in runtime, when things are being monitored, the remediation should be efficient. It shouldn't take extra cycles. If security teams are implementing the right tools throughout the entire software development lifecycle, then that helps developers because they're doing things within their process and there's efficiency across all teams. So a lot of the takeaways are the efficiency. And then the other, I guess, exciting part is just, try the product, see which things make things eat. I think there's a big need for the security tools to, like I said, give them visibility and control, but also be easy to use. See if, you try a tool and you get more visibility and can see things that you couldn't see before. See if it relieves you from having to go manually do things. Like that ability, that's the exciting part about how things have evolved is like you can go in and try these tools and see if they work and put them through their paces, and there's a lot of good stuff.
I feel like that's kind of unique to AppSec tooling is everything is try before you buy. You just can't do that in the rest of security. Everything else is 8 conversations and sales calls before you even get to touch the product and try it out and find out it's out of your price range, or there's no pricing on the website, there's no downloading it and trying it out. So that's at least something.
And that's right. Like modern vendors, yes, please put your pricing, please let people try it. Work with customers, talk to customers, find out what their pain points are. And, that's how they'll succeed as well.
Well, Melinda, thank you so much for joining us today in Application Security Weekly. Love that we had this conversation. Had enough in my notes here for another 60 minutes that we don't have, but next time.
Yep. Always great talking with you both.
All right. We'll be right back in a few moments with some application security news.